every story has murderous coconut crabs. Like these coconut crabs are just psychos.
There's a dodecahedron shaped area of the ocean that if you fly over, you just guaranteed crash.
And they genuinely just captured her. That's one of the theories. It's Dan,
And it's Cam.
and you're listening to the Frost Files podcast. Join us as we melt away the mysteries surrounding some of the biggest cold cases and conspiracies.
We're two lifelong friends with great intrigue looking for answers and understanding. In today's podcast, we're going to be discussing the disappearance of Amelia Earhart.
If you want to keep up with all things Frost Files, make sure to shoot us a follow on our socials at the Frost Files podcast. Yeah, Amelia Earhart, the famous pilot. She was actually one of the greatest pilots of all time. Did you know that? She's not only like one of the greatest women pilots, like she is an amazing, like she's better than most of the men, if not all. Like she's genuinely one of the best pilots ever. A lot of people, I don't want to get,
Wow, just saying, she can't be all that great. I mean, she
well, oh, yeah, I mean, yeah.
most likely crashed. So I don't want to say that great. I mean, every pilot I know so far has not
Not
died in a
crash.
crash, so she definitely was a groundbreaking um, phenomenon in the,
I see
I
what you
guess,
did there.
aviation industry.
Groundbreaking. Too soon. Uh,
Yeah,
but some of
only
her,
about 87 years too soon, 83 years too soon.
give it some time, man. Um, so she was an American aviator. She set multiple flying records. She definitely was like one of the biggest pushes for women into the field of aviation. But not only women, she also became the first. Well, she was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, and she was the first person in human history to fly solo from Hawaii to the U.S. mainland. So she has all these accomplishments that, like I was saying, aren't necessarily tied to just being a woman. Not a lot of people kind of know about that. She's genuinely just well, she hmm, she was doing good for a while.
Fun fact about Amelia Earhart, if you didn't know, her sister actually loaned her the money to buy her first plane, which she later had to sell because her parents divorced and moved. She had
Another
to
fun
help her mom get a new house.
another fun fact: her sister's name was Muriel, and that's gross.
Yeah, another fun Amelia Earhart fact is she's actually a junior. Her mother's name is also Amelia Earhart. I didn't know that
I
until
didn't
we
know that
started
either.
researching this episode.
That's actually
Yeah,
pretty cool.
thought that was pretty cool.
That is cool. So during one of her flights, she disappeared somewhere in the Pacific Ocean in July of 1937. Her plane wreckage was never found, and eventually they had to declare her lost at sea. Um, so, I mean, that's where we're at right now. There's been some extensive studies done ever since, research trying to find out where she's at. There are some pretty strong theories, almost concrete, and there are some other ones that are interesting, not necessarily true, but there's nothing 100% positive at this moment, 5/15/2024. Um, so that's kind of where we're at right now. So,
Yeah, so I guess just kind of getting into the lead up of, building up to the disappearance. She was set to fly across the equator. She wanted to be the first person to fly around the equator. So essentially a worldwide trip. Um, Originally the plane she was set to take off in, um, shortly after she departed, there was an issue with the landing gear, and she actually had to make a like emergency landing, which did delay the actual takeoff of her expedition. So I mean that could be a contributing factor if there was an issue with the plane. That could explain, just the disappearance, or you know her being a very seasoned pilot. Fred Noonan, who was also in the plane with her, being a very seasoned navigator. That could have also very well explained why, you know they went missing or disappeared over the ocean.
can we just take a second to talk about how nobody talks about Fred?
Yeah, Fred Noonan. He was, I guess the navigator, co-pilot. Um, yeah, he had actually worked with Amelia Earhart for years leading up to this, so it wasn't necessarily like they had just met. And again, he was a very experienced um, navigator. I mean, he worked as a sea captain. He he actually charted some of the most or some of the first like commercial airline routes across the Pacific. So, he's definitely um, well experienced in aviation. Um,
He knew his stuff. Um, and one thing is
oh yeah.
at the time too, just because Amelia Earhart was breaking so many headlines, being a woman in that field, like good for her. But yeah, Fred got really overshadowed. I mean, even in the disappearance, none of the articles pretty much mentioned him. And that played an effect into the future. Like, still nobody really cares about. Like, was this guy eaten by coconut crabs? We don't really know. Nobody,
Yeah, I mean,
nobody wants to find him.
I'm I'm not even gonna lie. I personally didn't even do that much research into Fred
Oh,
just for this episode.
me either.
So that you're definitely correct. He's
I'm
very
sorry,
overlooked.
Fred. Um,
Yeah,
anyways, enough about Fred.
right.
Let's move on.
Fred got his honorable mention. Yeah, so about the plane they were on, it was a Lockheed Model 10E. The E stood for Electra, also just known as the Lockheed Electra. Um, yeah, it was first introduced into 1935, so at the time of their disappearance, it was still a relatively new airplane. But then again, at that time, that would be considered cutting edge, and you probably wouldn't want to fly across the entire world in kind of like an older plane or old model plane. You'd probably want to go with the most recent technology. But of course, with that, its first prototype flight was just 3 years prior to the disappearance. So I can't imagine, that exact model would have had, very much experience in long-term flights, very long routes, especially something, international. I guess you could consider this type of this flight.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean the equipment at the time definitely posed a risk. Do you think they just wasn't time yet to make a trip like that? I mean they got close.
Most likely. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't believe it would have been impossible by any means. I think it was just with the most logical explanation of them being missing is either, like they ran out of fuel, or there was an issue with the navigating tools they had, or there was an issue, with the, actual, engines and um, the more mechanical aspects of the plane. So, I mean, with those being the most likely theories of what happened, um, I don't think it was the wrong time to make a trip like that. I think it was just the wrong equipment, or just
Just luck.
I don't want to say just bad luck, but yeah,
Yeah.
bad luck.
No, 100%. Also, there's a place. Most people, I don't want to say most people, there's a strong belief that she actually crashed in the Bermuda Triangle. Um, and I think that must come from, when people talked about their equipment and stuff jamming up. Some people would say Mandela effect, which we might cover later. But so there's a strong belief that she actually crashed in the Bermuda Triangle. This isn't one of those theories we're going to dive that deep into because, I mean, it's just proven she wasn't there. Um, but yeah, I mean, the Bermuda Triangle affects communications. That's probably where they got confused. Um,
Possibly, but as I just recently learned as an adult, the Bermuda Triangle is in the Atlantic Ocean,
correct.
and they crashed over the Pacific.
See,
But it's funny you mentioned Mandela effect because I feel like I have very strong memories of like believing like, oh yeah, Amelia Earhart crashed over the Bermuda Triangle, and like that's why it's like got that like mystery and that like theory that any
It could.
planes that fly
Mhm.
over will crash.
No,
Thought that started with Amelia Earhart, but guess not.
no, the Bermuda Triangle is very interesting. Fuck, maybe we'll cover that one too. There's so many, but maybe it wasn't even a
Maybe I mean
Bermuda
maybe there's
Triangle.
just like a second. Yeah,
Maybe
maybe there's a second one out there.
an octagon. Maybe it's an octagon.
The Bermuda dodecahedron.
That's it.
That's what it's got to be, dude.
It's the Bermuda
That's the one.
dodecahedron. So
Yes, there's a dodecahedron shaped area of the ocean that if you fly over, you just guaranteed crash. Your plane can't comprehend all of the angles.
yeah, it stretches from so the Bermuda dodecahedron, similar to its cousin, the Bermuda Triangle, covers a large mass of space. Instead of a triangle, it's obviously a dodecahedron. So it's three dimensional, and it covers a space between
Hmm.
Papua New Guinea, the stratosphere, and Japan.
Exactly.
So,
This is satire for those that think we're just insane now. But yeah.
I'm gonna cut you. I'm gonna cut that out,
Uh,
and I'm just gonna say that.
so yeah, the belief was that obviously something had to have gone wrong. But yeah, there's a couple of interesting theories that I feel like just haven't really had much light shined on them, at least here in more recent times.
And some of them don't deserve
Uh,
that light. But we're gonna cover
yeah,
it
so
anyways.
yeah, so I mean, one is that so in the Pacific, there's Pacific Islands, one of which is in relative proximity, at least in regards to uh, their flight path, the route they would have been on. Uh, One of the closest islands to them at the time was called Gardner Island. It's since, had a different name. It's now, I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of this. I don't even know if I want to attempt. Um,
I'll just edit it in
it's
until you get it
current
right. It's gonna be horrible.
Niku. Yeah, it's so formerly known as Gardner Island, now known as Nikuma Roro.
Is
I probably butchered that. Um, but essentially, what it is, it's like a triangular coral atoll. Basically, if you're looking at it from like above, it looks like it's essentially the silhouette of an island. And it does have it's almost triangle shaped, so there's two very long sides of the island in which she could have used as a landing strip in low tide. Um, so that's a theory. They ran out of fuel. I guess, flight enthusiasts and engineers have speculated that, with that type of plane that they were flying, by the time they had reached that point, they should have been either out of fuel or very low on fuel. Gardner Island, I'm just going to call it Gardner Island. I know that's not what it's called anymore, but um, I don't feel like butchering the
no,
pronunciation of
you're
what
all
it's
good.
actually called every other time. It's roughly 300 miles away from Howland Island, which is where they were supposed to land to refuel. Or not necessarily on Gardner Island, but on an aircraft carrier off the coast of Gardner Island. So it was roughly 300 miles away. So one of the most popular theories is that Amelia and Fred had either crash landed or emergency landed on this island and were stranded. Given that it's just an atoll, if tide rises, they could have easily you know, been swept out. Their plane could have been swept out to
Exactly.
sea. Um, they could have been exposed to wildlife. There's
Ooh,
now,
ooh.
fresh water. Yeah.
This is
Uh, so
the
yeah, so
the
that
coconut
leads us
crabs.
into yep, my favorite theory.
uh,
Um,
so this theory's
I'll let you go ahead and take over
yeah, no
there.
problem. I love this. I don't want to say I love this theory if it's true. We have no evidence that this is specifically what happened. I mean, the crash could have like good and well done them in. So I mean, there's a lot of different locations, but the story is always the same. That she was literally ripped apart by coconut crabs. Every story has murderous coconut crabs. Like these coconut crabs are just psychos, according to these people. So avoid.
Yeah. And in for the record, they're called coconut crabs because their pinchers are strong enough to crack coconuts. And these crabs can be like up to a couple feet in size. So they're I feel like in numbers they're more than capable of like killing and eating people, but I don't know if that's within their norm. I'm not a coconut crab expert.
I was just gonna say I've looked into this a little bit because I remember hearing about this when I was younger. Um, so it is completely out of their norm. It's not something like they've been known to ever do. I'm gonna really quick just double check if there's any instances of any like murders by coconut crabs. Um, there is a video of a coconut crab just holding a knife to somebody though. Have you seen that?
I have. You never know. Maybe there are some bad apples out there in the coconut crab population.
They
I
definitely
guess
got
we
killer
can't judge
instinct.
all of them.
Yeah,
Oh
we
yeah.
can't we can't judge all of them. Um, However, as far as I know, there's no cases of them actually killing people. But if you gave him enough time with that knife, I'm sure he would have done it. But they do
Oh
kill
yeah.
wildlife. So I mean, if their body was in pieces or something or whatever, it's very possible.
But yeah, one interesting thing about the Gardner Island crash theory is there was actually a skeleton found on that island back in 1940. However, with 1940 technology and forensic analysis, when they looked at the bones, they were like, "Yep, these are definitely a man's bones. These cannot be Amelia, and they're too short to be Fred Noonan." So it was just kind of ruled out immediately, and the bones were discarded. Not sure what discarded means. I don't know if they just buried them or if they were incinerated or if they just, I don't know, somebody just took them home from the office one day. So yeah, the bones are gone, so we can't do any form of modern DNA testing. However, there was a reanalysis of the data from 1940, running modern technology software. They match with Amelia better than 99% of other individuals. And that's just going off of the stuff that they can analyze. Not only are the bones actually from a female, but um, with estimations of like her bone lengths based on like the clothes she would wear and like photographs we have of Amelia. Yeah, it's like a 99% match with Amelia Earhart. Um,
So
so I personally say the Gardner Island theory is the most credible. She had crash landed 300 miles away. There's likely some radio issues. Her and Fred were probably just stuck. And because it's such a narrow coral atoll, you know, any other debris from the crash or even Fred's remains most likely got washed away back into the ocean. They could have definitely crashed off sea and washed up on that coral atoll. Never, I mean, we don't have any way to confirm or deny.
I swear I had Fred Amelia. Yeah, I mean it's right on her flight path. I feel like that is the most credible. And I mean, I guess this is where people regard coconut crabs because they found her skeleton and not his. Like she survived, and then got eaten by coconut crabs or something. But
I mean, maybe she ate him with the coconut
oh,
crabs. I mean,
maybe she lived there. I guess they found it in the 40s. But yeah, maybe she had a good time with the coconut crabs for a while before they finally got to her. They turned.
hey, you never know. Living
Uh,
off salt water, coconut crabs, and your navigator's carcass.
I also agree that that's probably the most credible source. I know there's some very similar things coming out of other islands though. I'm not sure if you've heard about like them finding like a piece of the plane or something like that, or what most likely is the exact same model, but it could have been a different plane.
Hmm.
Um, I don't.
Yeah, I know there's in a museum, I forget where exactly. The model number that's or sorry, the serial number that's two numbers below the plane Amelia and Fred took off in is on display. It's still intact. So there have been numerous attempts, when pieces are found, in the ocean, they have a still living reference that they can come back and compare these pieces to. For example, they find a propeller wash up in some island in the Pacific, there's very clear references, to is this part of the plane, or is this, the same model of plane, or is it just a completely unrelated, hunk of metal? Um, I personally haven't heard too much of, actual confirmed pieces of a Lockheed,
There's
Model 10E being found.
Yeah, so there's one fragment in 1991, an aluminum, literally an aluminum fragment was found in the Pacific island nation of Kiribati, and that I think also similar to the bones had like a 99% match to her ship, and then like the age of decay for that part made sense. Like it would have been pretty much exactly when she left. Um,
Hmm.
but I haven't checked the path of that island, so really quick, I'm gonna Google
I,
search that.
I think if Kiribati, I want to say that that's where Gardner Island is, because Gardner Island is a coral atoll as well.
Okay.
Um, and I believe it is like part of like a chain of islands. Um, so I mean that definitely does make sense. That adds up.
And then yeah, I mean it could have just drifted very easily. So I think we're coming with our own conclusion. Yeah.
Right?
No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to find the distance between the two really quick.
So part of Kiribati is like the country, I guess you could say. Um,
And
and part of that
is Gardner
country is
Island?
is like yeah, there's it's like different island groups. There's the Gilbert Islands, the Line Islands, and the Phoenix Islands, and Gardner Island is part of the Phoenix Islands.
I see it.
So I mean, if the plane were to crash anywhere in that region, it's not completely out of reasonable logic that any parts or bone fragments could have, floated over, drifted over,
Yeah,
um,
I guess the only hard part is finding out which drifted. Did the plane drift or did the bones drift?
yeah, or did they just, land on one or crash on one and, you know, everything else either didn't survive the impact or just was scattered over time, you know?
No, exactly. I mean, I feel like we pretty much have nailed it down to what happened. I think it's just the locations are. It's gonna take a while to kind of come down with that information.
Yeah, so that kind of combines like our theories one and two, she crash landed either in the ocean or on an island somewhere in that region, because that would be in her flight path, and it's estimated she'd be out of fuel. If she did, crash land and survive, of course, she would have been exposed to not only the elements, um, lack of fresh water, food,
Coconut
but
crabs.
also any potential wildlife, coconut crabs.
Um,
Um,
yeah, I feel like
there's
she.
another, yeah,
I was gonna say real quick. I do feel like I mean, I feel like coconut crabs probably did get her, but there's no way it was when she was alive. She'd probably already passed on, was decaying when the coconut crabs came and probably picked pieces away. If that's where that theory comes from, that makes sense to
yeah,
me.
yeah. I mean, there's another theory that the whole crash landing was a big setup. Essentially, the way that theory goes is that Amelia and Fred were in cahoots with the U.S. government around the time of the crash. Because mind you, this is leading up to, the start of World War II, literally 5 days before the official start of World War
It
II.
was right there, yeah.
Um, yeah, so with these islands in the Pacific kind of being under Japanese control, having a famous celebrity pilot quote unquote go missing in that area would give the US valid reason to be able to fly over these islands and do surveillance essentially. Um, so I mean the way that that would have to pan out is there never was a a landing supposed to be in Howland Island. The aircraft carrier that she was set to land on and refuel would have been there for either just for show or would have had, some form of, weaponry on it just in case, there was any form of conflict or escalation or just simply a show of force in the area. And Amelia and Fred would have either never taken off or they would have just landed somewhere else. Um, it's the 40s or the late 30s rather. It's not like anyone could have just got on, a flight tracker and just,
Yeah.
Google,
So,
where did
Santa
they
tracker.
land or, yeah. So, take off for show, suspiciously go down somewhere in the Pacific, and the U.S. can do their surveillance, and find out what Japan is up to.
Yeah, I was gonna say that kind of leads into the theory. There's a good amount of them revolving around the Japanese in general, especially just because it was
Hmm.
wartime. So I feel like genuinely, like conspiracy theory, like today, a lot of people, oh, it was Russia, it was China. My phone doesn't work. What is China doing to my phone? Um, so I feel like just wartime enemies in general are always looked at to blame. But there was another occurrence where she was supposedly, and this is one of like three or four, she was taken prisoner. And there's like photos of her being a prisoner in Japan. So they're saying she was somehow captured, shot down, landed, captured, or she had to land somewhere near them for fuel, and they genuinely just captured her. That's one of the theories.
Yeah, and of course it's possible. I just don't think that one would be very likely because I feel like there's no way that just nobody would find out. It's possible, if, naturally, like I said, this is within 5 days of the official start of World War II. Um, so it's entirely possible. You've got a country who's kind of on high alert. They're ready to go to war. They're gearing up, and all of a sudden they see an American aircraft flying over, Pacific Islands, and they're like, "Well, this is it. Get it down." Maybe they were shot down over the Pacific by the Japanese, or, like you said, when they landed, some boats pulled up, or like, nada, come with us.
Yeah, you're going with
Um,
us.
part, yeah, part of that theory also stems from like supposed pictures of the Japanese,
Yes.
dismantling her aircraft and throwing the pieces into the ocean. Uh, that just doesn't make sense to me because you've got this, pretty much brand new Lockheed American,
Like the best of the best.
aircraft. You would think they would be a bit more resourceful with that. I mean, I don't know if Japan's sense of nationalism was so high that they were like, yeah, no, we're not doing anything with this. Just take it apart and just throw it in the water.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
garbage.
they definitely did have high nationalism, so that could definitely play a role in that theory. But I mean, the photo's weird too. Amelia Earhart's supposed to be supposedly in the background. The girl looks pretty Japanese to me. It's hard to tell from a distance, black and white photo, whatever. Um, but
Hmm.
also, why would she just be sitting there? Um, like no one is. There's like
Yeah,
one person looking towards her.
yeah. Like you don't think like a prisoner of war or just someone who was just caught, essentially illegally flying into your country, or your country's airspace, you don't think they would be in some form of like military installation, under constant supervision and not just chilling.
It looked like a couple of
Yeah.
people who were like hanging out at the dock, just like started ripping her plane apart and told her to like sit down and that they called the cops.
Yeah, like what the heck? I mean, for all we know, yeah, I mean, they could have been pulling pieces of the wreckage out of the water. I mean, I guess we don't really have a way to know for sure. Um, one thing I read is with the aircraft carrier that she was set to land on to refuel, they had reported her incoming radio transmissions as sounding frantic. Um, And it was also, stated that it seemed like they could hear her, but she could not hear them. Or, maybe there's some reason that she was ignoring their radio broadcasts, not responding on purpose. Um, which again, could just be chalked up to some form of electrical issue, radio problems. You've got a relatively new aircraft, you know,
Well, is
so that always could be the problem.
I was gonna say, isn't Fred the one who's supposed to answer those and respond?
Yeah, I mean, I would think, with her as the pilot, she's in charge of flying, Fred's in charge of navigating. Um, and they again, like they could hear her, so she was, making, I would assume regular reports on like her altitude, speed, fuel levels, conditions that she's flying through. But she wasn't, responding to, certain things that they were asking or, checking in on her. Um, so you never know. I mean, this is, I would have to assume before any form of, radio blocking or, radio jamming, stuff like that. But um,
Yeah,
if she couldn't get in correct contact and, maybe their course was a little bit off, who knows how long she could have been flying just in the complete wrong direction or just at a slightly different angle than she was supposed to be and wound up way off course, with no way to confirm to correct it,
a
no
hundred
way to,
percent.
redesignate a landing place, hey, this is where we are, this is where we're going to land, we need you to get here, so that could have been it. I mean, with her experience as a pilot and Fred's experience as a navigator, I don't think it would have been like a rookie mistake, like,
No.
well, this is where they said we should go,
Let's try.
y-
Yeah,
you
this doesn't
know,
look right. Let's go left. No.
right?
Especially with Fred
I
back
can't
there.
read this handwriting. Is this a 3 or an 8 in these coordinates?
Yeah,
I'm gonna
I'm
just go
kind.
ahead and guess 3.
I'm gonna make a new theory right here. Like again, I'd have to look into who responds to communications. It might be the pilot. But what if Fred had? He's pretty young, wasn't he? He was like 40.
Fred?
How
Yeah.
old?
I
How old
mean,
was?
40, which like in the 30s, that's basically like 65. So,
He could have had a health problem, and then maybe she relied on him for navigation, and unfortunately didn't know what to do, and the communications weren't working. I mean, there could be many pieces to the story. Things like that could have happened.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, they're both pretty experienced. It wasn't Amelia's first long-term flight,
she did, yeah, she had
or
some
at
good
least
experience.
record-breaking flight. She had worked with Fred previously, and he had been doing this for a long time. At least half of his life he had spent either working as a navigator or, as a sea captain, um, or just working generally in the aviation industry. I mean, again, I think I mentioned earlier, he had actually charted some of the first, commercial airline routes across the Pacific. So, I mean, I don't want to assume that he knew the area very well because, when you're flying over the ocean, everything is kind of the same. But, you know, it's not his first rodeo either.
So I have dug up some information. That's kind of cool to find. I feel like a lot of people probably haven't talked about this theory. I mean, I made it up on the spot, and there might be some truth to it. So, um, Noonan actually had a syndrome called pulmonary valve stenosis, which interferes with blood flow from the heart to the lungs. So he would regularly have like fatigue, that blue appearance, shortness of breath, um, and I know it can also, I think it can just lead to heart attacks. So he actually did have a heart issue. But again, like you said,
Interesting.
she probably should have known how to do that on her own. I'm not sure. Was that the first time she flew that model of plane?
Um,
It couldn't have been.
I
There,
I don't I don't believe so. I mean, like I said, there was an attempted flight earlier, just before they had set out on July 2nd. Um, but I don't know her exact experience level with that specific plane, or how different it would have been from other models of that plane she had flown previously.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, it is interesting. That is a factor you have to consider. He did have a pretty bad heart, and he was pushing 50, which
Yeah,
back
it was like
then,
44.
yeah, back then, that's, you had a little more health issues a little earlier in life. So it's
Yeah,
I mean the cool thing about the Amelia Earhart case really is all of these theories can kind of intertwine. Oh, except like hey, I mean she could have spied on the Japanese and then crashed in Gardner Island on the running away. Um, but a lot of these
yeah.
theories. Did you want to add anything?
I mean, there's one that we haven't talked about yet that is just kind of completely left field. I mean, coconut crabs are definitely pretty left field, but um, there was speculation that she had moved to New Jersey, remarried, and changed her name.
What?
There was a woman named Irene Bolam, or Irene Craigmile Bolam.
That's her.
Um, yeah. I guess people had just kind of like seen this New Jersey woman was a housewife, and we're just like, hey, that's Amelia Earhart. You're Amelia Earhart. Um,
Yeah, I don't know if you knew
which
this lady,
you know,
but you're her.
yeah, and I mean, obviously that's pretty easily debunked, because living your entire life as a separate person who's not Amelia Earhart is a pretty solid alibi in regards to not being Amelia Earhart. I mean, this woman didn't just like show up one day and be like, "Yo, it's not me, guys."
Have you
But
seen?
that was an interesting theory of the time.
No, no, it is. Have you seen like people when she came out and told them like she wasn't her, she's lived an entire life. Some people claimed like she had hit her head on a crash. Like this is part of the theory that I don't know if it was at the time or not, but she had hit her head on the like in the crash and remembered like a life that wasn't hers.
Yeah, I mean, like that could be a thing if Irene wasn't already married to someone else and like literally
No,
just
no.
not Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, I'm
You
not
know?
backing this theory, but I like that people were like instead of able to accept that it's not her, they had to be like, no, you're lying. Like this.
Yeah, dude, the gaslighting, imagine, dude. It's just like, nope, you definitely hit your head. You're Amelia Earhart. You just don't know it, silly.
I've been married to her for like 15 years. Yeah, you're Newman. You're Noonan. You you were in the crash
Right?
too. That's not your wife.
Right? I don't know. This guy, I don't know who this guy is, but you're her. For sure, for sure. Look,
So,
here's this grainy photo from 1935.
do,
This is you.
do,
It's like, what do you mean?
you-
Like, she had like children, like, uh,
yeah, she had been well
so yeah,
established.
obviously Irene is not Amelia Earhart. That was pretty easily debunked, but it was the 30s and 40s. Theories and misinformation, I'm sure, were spreading like wildfires.
I mean, that was only like
Um,
200 years, 300 years since Salem happened. Like we were still learning.
yeah, yeah. Um, and yeah, and this is all before the internet and any modern technology, so it's not like we could just ping her iPhone, or anything like that. Um,
Snapchat maps.
you find Irene's
Snapchat.
Facebook photos from 5 years prior, like it wasn't, technology. So I mean it's fair that, misinformation was spreading, but yeah, she was definitely not Irene Bolam.
So yeah, we can roll that out. Hopefully, she had a great life, not being Amelia Earhart. Um,
Yeah. I think at one point she'd even either threatened to sue someone or open a lawsuit against like a publication company who was like spreading like rampantly like, hey, that's Amelia Earhart. She's Amelia Earhart. She
that
didn't
huh.
crash and disappear. She's just living a secret double life. How scandalous. Like,
That I mean, that's pretty.
I mean,
Well, you know what? We haven't learned from that. people who look like Michael Jackson like are constantly harassed.
Right?
Like we still do this as a society. Like who else died that like Epstein still well, there's a lot of money and power in play there. I'm not going to say anything about that, but like um Michael Jackson, there's a lot of money there too, but that man actually died. Michael
Yeah.
Jackson, what are some of the other ones? There's some I'm missing. The biggest one I can think of is like Michael Jackson's living on an island and he's just relaxing. Not Epstein Island,
Yeah.
but
Tupac,
Tupac.
Biggie,
Tupac was the one I was thinking about. It's
Queen of England.
the Queen of England still. I mean, look, if she didn't die by then, she's dead by now. If she's been on an island, but
Hey, I don't know, man. You get enough blood of, newborn babies on your skin, you'll live forever.
that's true. I'm the baby.
Yeah, so I mean, are there any more theories about the disappearance of Amelia Earhart that kind of jump out at you we haven't
No,
covered yet?
no. I mean the dodecahedron theory. I mean that kind of fits in with the other one. So you want to know my personal opinion on the matter?
Hmm.
I think that I'm on the wrong page. Hold on. I think actually I was on the right page. I have to go back now. I personally think she did crash on Gardner Island. That piece of aluminum that they found, that fragment, was from her ship because, like, same thing, the bones 99% match and that fragment 99% match. Um, Her co-pilot probably just died. Bones ended up in the ocean. Not sure how her bones ended up there. Probably washed up. Um, I don't know how intact they were. That plays a role. Um, and I genuinely just think, yeah, there was a navigational issue, probably something like that. That's usually what gets people, even to this day, having problems with communication. And I genuinely think she, yeah, just crashed, washed up, and possibly coconut crabs were at roll, but after she was dead, um, unlikely, and that it all happened in the dodecahedron. And it was the dodecahedron's fault that she lost communication.
I couldn't agree more. Uh, yeah, like I said earlier, the most likely thing that happened is some sort of mechanical failure with the aircraft that caused her and Fred to go down, or even just a problem with the gauges that they were reading off of, um, them being an experienced, pilot, obviously if your fuel gauge has been showing full for like over 1,000 miles, odds are something is probably wrong.
You'd figure it
And
out.
when you're over the ocean, yeah, you don't really have a whole lot of options on where you can land and get a repair crew over to you. Or if you're having radio issues, you can't really check in to like confirm your landing spot,
No,
confirm coordinates,
100%.
If your navigator has a heart attack, mid-flight and punches, the
Oh,
steering
is
gear
that the
of the
new?
aircraft,
Is that the new
yeah,
theory? He just like
I
fell over and
guess,
grabbed the
just
wheel.
yeah,
I
hey,
don't want to. Oh
you
man.
never know. It could have been.
Oh,
Um,
poor guy.
I mean, there's also, theories of like foul play. It was a secret plot to get rid of the woman pilot. It's still a very, you know, I don't know the right word. It's still a very sexist time. Maybe there was some sort of conspiracy. Fred was supposed to get rid of Amelia, but
They never found his bones.
you can't really just, yeah, I mean, you can't really, I mean, it's pretty hard to just kind of kill your pilot, while she's
Yeah,
flying. I mean,
there's not like ejector seats like a sci-fi movie.
right?
So,
Just open the hatch. What for? Just open it. Just trust me.
so yeah, I mean we've pretty much come to our conclusion. A few jokes in there, but yeah, she most likely crashed on that island, and they're close to that island, washed up there. That's pretty much all we have. it's
Yeah,
possible she survived for a few days, but I'm honestly gonna bet on she died on impact.
yeah. I mean, the real answer is we'll never know for sure.
Maybe.
Because those bones that were found on Gardner Island were disposed of back in
Yeah.
1940.
Thanks for that, by the
Um,
way, people of 1940.
right? Like, what the heck, dude? She's like, nope, it's not them, and just gets rid of them.
That's like
Discards them is the verbiage that they use. He discarded the bones.
worst detective ever. That's like me finding like a murder scene. I'm like, well, it's not that person I was looking for. Let's move on. Throw it away.
Right? Just it ain't them, and just cremate the body. Just destroy any physical evidence. That could possibly answer this this almost century-long mystery.
The, I,
Yeah, I could not imagine being that guy. Just like, hey, is that the dude who got rid of Amelia Earhart's bones before anyone could confirm or deny that it was her?
yeah,
Because
that is him.
I mean, like,
That's him. Get him. Get
you're a
him.
random,
Attack him.
right? Right? I mean, like, this is a random, forensic investigator. You've got 1940s forensic capabilities. It's not like they could just run a DNA
Yeah.
sample or something like that. Which we could do now if we had, bones to go off of, or even just to confirm that the bones were, from a male or female. I mean, it's just hard to say, I mean,
I
there's no, yeah,
yeah, I honestly believe anytime we can't figure out a case, like we don't have the technology for it, we just put it on ice until the people in the future figure it out.
yeah. I mean, there's been tons of crimes, that have been solved, through physical evidence left at the scene of a crime, like a blood stain or something like that, or some hair or something like that was later tested and came up as a positive match, I mean, I'm sure there's probably tons of Amelia Earhart DNA out there that could have been cross-referenced, had they had the technology at the time, but, naturally there's not. I mean,
Or if they
she
were
had
just,
surviving family members.
or if they looked for Noonan at all. Like there's probably like a full-grown man's skeletons like in a tree, and they're just like, well, that's not her. Let's keep looking for her. Like, no,
Right? Her ghost is just like, dude, like, what the hell?
he's like,
I'm right here.
I'm the co-pilot. Like, okay, buddy.
Right? Just like, all right,
he was
somebody didn't take their meds.
he was perfectly fine. Like he managed to survive, and he's telling people what happened, and they're like, okay.
Right? Sure it did, pal. Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, in general, I mean that's what we believe. It's been a very fun topic, though. I enjoyed talking to you about it.
Yeah, a lot of interesting theories that go along with Amelia Earhart. Uh, so today, I mean, we've learned Amelia Earhart did not crash in the Bermuda Triangle. That we know of, that we can confirm.
Allegedly,
I mean, I don't know why she would have been on the other side of the world.
spy. I mean,
Uh,
people already think she's a spy, so who knows?
yeah, could have been captured or shot down over the
But
Pacific by the Japanese.
captured
Could
by
have
the
been eaten
Bermuda
by
Triangle.
crabs. Yeah, imprisoned in the Bermuda
Dodecahedron.
dodecahedron.
So there's lots of things at play that I mean we just don't understand, and we're not going to. Maybe in the future they do. Maybe we never do. But we have a
Yeah,
pretty good idea.
that's all we really got for you on this one here.
I've been Dan,
And I've been Cam,
and this is
and
the
this is
Frost.
the Frost Files.
Wait, we'll do it another time. Have a good one,
Yeah,
everyone.
I mean, yeah.
Bye.